Was Michael Myers really cursed from the very beginning in the original Halloween timeline? In the original Halloween timeline, we witness Michael Myers from the age of 6 in 1963 murder his older sister Judith, only to escape Smith's Grove Sanitarium 15 years later in 1978 to kill his other original timeline sister, Laurie Strode, ultimately failing and falling into a 10-year coma after being blown up and burned by Dr. Loomis. After waking up and making his way back to Haddonfield, Michael attempts on 3 separate occasions to kill his niece, Jamie Lloyd, finally succeeding the 3rd time around, but not before Jamie had given birth to a son, which Michael then began to hunt as well, and ultimately failing to kill due to the intervention of Tommy Doyle and the remaining members of the Strode family. It's around Michael's 2nd and 3rd attempts on Jamie's life that we learn about the existence of the Cult of Thorn, seeing its insignia tattooed on Michael's wrist in part 5. In part 6, we learn more about the cult and how their curse relates to Michael himself, allowing the cult to seemingly control him, at least temporarily. But it seemed a little off and sparked many questions, which stemmed from a theory I had in the original timeline. If I believed that Michael was controlled or afflicted by the Mark of Thorn and its curse from the very beginning, in or prior to 1963. My theory is no. I believe Michael Myers wasn't cursed with the Mark of Thorn until prior to the events of Part 4, during his 10-year coma, meaning that at some point while Michael was incapacitated, the cult tattooed the mark on him in order to bend his evil to their will and perform the necessary sacrifices for their own personal gain. First, in order to buy into this theory, we have to look at a few things, such as why the cult chose Michael in the first place, how their magic seems to work on him, such as the mark itself, and if this is indeed true, how does it change the overall narrative of the original timeline, if at all? While the original belief was that Michael was chosen and cursed by the cult from the very beginning, I disagree. Believing the story Mrs. Blankenship tells Danny in part 6 about Michael Myers to be a lie. I believe that Michael didn't capture the attention of the cult until the events of part 1 and 2 at the earliest, possibly being impressed by the seemingly unkillable monster that was hunting his sister he practically never knew, with a patience over the course of 15 years that almost seemed inhuman. However, the cult likely wouldn't have had plans for Michael at least until after the events of part 3, if you believe Season of the Witch to be canon to the rest of the original timeline. It's possible that Cochran may have been associated with the cult on some level, and upon completing his goal, the Cult of Thorn, knowing what the result would be, began using its own old rituals for their own purposes, but also knowing that a sacrifice will need to be made in order to appease their own deity. Dr. Wynn, being a high-ranking member, may have felt he had the perfect candidate in Michael Myers to carry out the necessary sacrifices. And since their particular ritual called for the eradication of a cursed bloodline that was only active near or on Halloween, it was a perfect way for the cult to set loose a monster to perform the needed sacrifices and really never catch the attention of their involvement, since all of Michael's initial murders all took place around that time frame anyways. So at some point, Michael was given the Mark of Thorn while unconscious, and its magic was enough to keep Michael's own evil in check, at least temporarily, and he began his hunt for his niece, Jamie Lloyd, on the orders of the cult to carry out the curse. After years of failed attempts though, when the constellations aligned, the cult's power began to dampen, and Michael, who had been fighting for control of himself, once again began to overpower the cult's control, even after Jamie's death, which was likely why Michael burned the insignia into the stacks of hay, hoping that someone like Loomis would see it and step in, which pretty much happened, and further explains why the cult began to move on to Danny and the Strodes as the next family to sacrifice, since Jamie's child was presumably lost and new sacrifices must be made. Finally free, due to Michael's failures, Michael begins hunting and killing cult members indiscriminately, along with everybody else we see in part 6, while still wanting to kill Jamie's child, and is defeated by Tommy or is trapped by the ruins, depending on the cut that you watch. Either way, it's shown that Michael escapes, free of the control of the Cult of Thorn, while Loomis in the producer's cut gains the mark from Dr. Wynn, which I believe was meant to send Loomis after Michael, endowed with the cult's remaining power as a form of the cult's revenge on the Shape. Now, while I feel like this theory and how it affects the overall narrative with Michael being evil all along and the cult just stepping in around that 10-year time gap doesn't fix everything, it does help the continuity a bit better, aside from the transforming Myers house from part 5. Nothing can fix that. But that's my theory. Do you agree, or do you believe that Michael was cursed from the very beginning in the original timeline? I personally like to believe that Michael was always the Shape, with or without the curse. But comment below with your own theories, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe, as well as hitting the notification bell to be alerted whenever a new video is uploaded. And as always, I am JG Dark, and thanks for watching.